Alright, so I almost never do these type of videos, but I figured I'd go ahead and make an exception. Hey there guys, Noah here, and welcome back to a Vanguard tier list for Bushiroad Springfest 2022. 4th V Premium in specific. Now, I'm going to start by saying that I have been experimenting with a lot of stuff over the last couple weeks, and as a result, I have a lot of deck profiles coming out in the future. But for the time being, I want to give my thoughts on what I think has a realistic chance at topping at Springfest this year. So this is going to be going off of my own personal idea of how I've seen the metagame change based off what I've seen, based what other people have used, and yeah, we're just gonna jump right into it. Now, I'm gonna have a lot of stuff to say, but I want to start by prefacing that I don't know every single deck by heart. You know, because there's probably gonna be one or two clans that I'm kind of on the fence about. You know, and how I'm gonna go about this is pretty simple, right? You're gonna have your top dogs, then you're gonna have your decks that actually are gonna have a chance at topping. And then you're gonna have the decks, so many of them, that are probably not gonna do well. So let's get into it. So start off with Angel Feather. Angel Feather, I'm gonna put in the good luck territory, because part of Angel Feather's problem is that they lost Hamiel. And outside of the Malkuth, there really isn't a very solid deck in general that actually does, I guess, well enough for Angel Feather. I've seen some people try to tech, Zerakiel to basically make it so you can have a turn 4 Feather Palace, but that's too much effort and you're probably gonna die way sooner than that. Aqua Force, I definitely see this coming up at points. I don't think it's a meta dog, but especially when you consider that Maelstrom Reverse is now a thing, I definitely think that it definitely has a chance. It depends on what it goes up against, but honestly, they got a lot of really good consistency. Especially now, even more so that regardless of which variant, you've got a really good support. In the case of Maelstrom, you've got those two cards that make it so that way your on hit actually still goes through. And then for Savas, shit, you just got Pursuit Assault, so you're sitting nice and pretty. So I definitely think that Aqua Force definitely has a chance. Speaking of, decks that are going to do very well, Bermuda, very self-explanatory. Despite the Prism hits, despite Highlander also getting hit at the same time, you are going to see a lot of Bermuda. Mostly because they didn't hit as much as a lot of people were expecting. Yes, you hit Aqua, yes, you hit the Prism Grade 2, but the problem stems from the fact that you still have Lieselot, and that in itself is a very powerful card. Not to mention that Prism isn't the only deck that can do moderately well. Expect to see maybe one or two Riviera depending on the circumstance, but I mean, I'm not sure about Melody, but I definitely think that Prism still has a chance. Melody maybe can get there, but honestly, expect to see Bermuda start topping here and there. Dark Irregulars, oh man. I want to say it has a chance, mostly because Dark Irregulars have Shahlaralt, which means they're gonna have multi-attacking, which means that any multi-attacking deck is honestly really solid. Not to mention you have certain cards that really combo off of each other pretty well. But yeah, I definitely think that Dark Irregular has a chance. Dimension Police, I'm gonna say it's definitely above Dark Irregulars in terms of viability. I think one of the biggest reasons why is that you have so many lines in play with Dimension Police currently. You can go the Die-Liner route or the Zeal route, but regardless, if you're going second and you rode Kaiser as your grade 2, you're basically near guaranteed 3 force markers a turn on that huge grade 3 turn if you ride Black. And even if you don't, you're still in a very good spot because you have a lot of really generically good cards in the DP clan. that can really just sit there and really punish your opponent for taking their time. Especially with Daikaiser in the mix now, where if they PG at a certain point, Daikaiser in itself can become a win con at times. So I definitely see Dimension Police, doing moderately well. But we also got to talk about Granblue now. So Granblue definitely, it's kind of a toss-up, but I definitely think that Granblue has a higher chance than Bermuda. And that's going to be a controversial take, but you have to keep in mind that Granblue didn't get hit the way that we were initially thinking. We thought they were going to hit the Navigator and the Skull Dragon to choice restrict them, but they never did. And so, for that reason alone, Granblue is going to be probably the premier Protect deck in this metagame. And I think that's without question, especially in a best-of-1 format where it's really like if you open Navigator, you're practically set. And it's just disgusting. Like, honestly, the stuff that Granblue can do, like, Night Rose is such a good card to a point where it can make, Granblue very consistent, much like in the same way how Dark Irregulars can. But I would argue even more so because Granblue's game plan works and honestly, their win condition is just Navigator plus Skull Dragon. It's honestly really disgusting. Gear Chronicle. I'm gonna say low, like, I'm gonna say it's definitely above just having a chance. I think that Gears is gonna be very good going into this format. However, I should preference this that only the Chronojet variants are going to do well, because I doubt that Chrono Tooth Tiger is going to do very decent, like the Chrono Fang Tigers and stuff like that. I don't think it's going to do well. The reason why I say Gears is going to do well is simply because they have a lot of really good guard restrict, which I've noticed isn't really that much of a thing in V. You have Chronojet, obviously, that blocks Sentinels. You've got Naboo that blocks grade 1 and higher, and then you got Colossus that makes you guard with 2 or more cards from hand for the whole turn, which is, honestly, that in itself can sometimes be a win condition in its own right. Combined with, like, regardless of if you go first or second, you typically have a really strong game plan. You'll go Time Leaper if you go first, and obviously you'll go next stage if you go second, but even, sometimes you still go Time Leaper regardless, because it's honestly, regardless, Gears is still going to have 4 attacks, and that's very prevalent. Especially when you combine that with guard restricted. I think it actually has a chance. Genesis, I will definitely vouch for it. It's better than Granblue. And I think that it's better than a lot of stuff. Himiko is interesting, but I don't think we'll see it nearly as much as Valkyrian. Why they didn't hit Valkyrian is honestly beyond me, considering that that was probably the other major problem child in the format at that point out of the set 12 metagame. And the fact that they didn't hit Valkyrian at all is actually pretty bonkers. I definitely do think that, especially since they can opt to run 12 crit in general, and then still have the Esenias Dragon that acts as a perfect guard, still pretty busted. I definitely think that Genesis is still going to be very good. I'm not sure about the Regalia stuff, but, that could pop up here and there, but honestly, I'm expecting Valkyrian to start doing well. Great Nature. Let me think. Great Nature, I'm going to say it's not doing anything. And that's because their last couple waves of support haven't been all that. You still have Isabel, you still have, Big Belly, which is okay at best, but I honestly don't see it doing well. Golds is kind of a mixed bag, but I'm going to put it slightly above Dimension Police, because the thing about Golds is that if they high roll, you're going to be in a really sore spot, but the issue is that they have to high roll. And regardless of which variant too, because Spectral Duke is still pretty strong, even though they did lose 3 copies of Percival. And Ezel, despite having its new Grand Ezel Scissors, is still a little too piece reliant. So that one still, if it high rolls, it still has a chance, and it can still blow people out of the water. But I don't expect it to be as much of a prevalent threat as before. Kagero. If we're specifically talking about the cross, then I'm gonna say it has a chance, but nowhere near as much. And the big reason for it is simply due to the very nature of the cross and then the advent of heal guards. Like, it's very true. It could still blow you out, like, regardless. It could still absolutely wreck your stuff, but, like, I don't think that the cross is nowhere near as broken as it was back in set 8. So definitely, I think Kagero is going to do very good, but I don't think it'll be as good as some of the other decks. Link Joker. I'm going to say, as a terms of high roll, it's stronger than Gold's. And the simple reason is for it is because they now have the promo that sits there and says, hey, I can get an easy free Vogogo turn 1, regardless if I go first or second. Like, if they open that one card, your entire game plan is going to have to rely on trying to find a way to get around that thing. Either that or you just start taking a bunch of hits and hope and pray you hit triggers along the way. But even then, like, LJ has a really good consistent game plan with the Messiah engine. Especially since your grade 3 slot is a little bit flexible too. You're obviously going to run 4 Alter Ego, but then at that point, you could opt for the Order to guarantee that you'll have 2 Vogogods on turn 3, or you can go the Harmonics route and push for that late game pressure with the Burst Monk, I think it's called, that if you reveal a grade 3 off its skill, you can restand the Vanguard. Like, that is such a strong, very strong win condition that I could see it definitely having way more potential as in terms of high roll than something like Gold Paladin or Kagero. Mega Colony, I'm going to say it's trash. They haven't really gotten that much good support in the last couple sets. And it's kind of, Mega Colony has always been kind of doo-doo butter, unfortunately, so I hate to say that, but I'm sorry. Murakumo. I think that Murakumo is interesting, but I don't think it's going to be that good. I'm going to put it slightly below Dark Irregulars. You've got Shirayuki, yes. You got the new Yakivoke stuff, but really, outside of that, what are you playing? Hyuga at that point, and most people by this point should know how to play around it, so yeah, I don't see that coming up. Nova's, I'm going to say it has a better chance than Great Nature, but actually, you know what? I'm going to rearrange this. I'm going to put Angel Feather toward here, but Nova Grappler, you know, it's definitely kind of just it's struggle street, honestly, for Novas. Like, true, they have the Victor plays. Yeah, they can technically go, you know, the Beast Deity route, but really outside of that, what does Novas really have? God Hand? God, talk about the deck that hasn't got support in like a century and a half. Just yikes. Narukami, I think it's gonna do pretty well. I would say definitely above Kagero, but mostly because Eradicators are just very consistent as in terms of their game plan. Vanquisher is kind of, you know, pretty good too, but I'm not sure if he'll do nearly as well as some of the other higher up decks. So, you know, that one's up for debate. Neonectar, I actually think that if you allow Neonectar to high roll, it will definitely do better than a Kagero in some ways. Actually, no. Definitely, Neonectar is definitely better than DI and Murakumo in that respect. Cecilia Reverse has catapulted this deck, or this entire clan, I should say, that from obscurity to doing something. I definitely think that it is extremely piece reliant, and Neko has been testing out a few, you know, variants of this deck. But honestly, Neonectar has been getting really decent support, and I can see it pop up here and there, honestly. Cecilia Reverse is such an interesting card, but again, it really does depend on whether or not you can high roll into it. So, I'm going to leave it there for now. Nubas, I will definitely vouch for Nubas and say that it is definitely going to be a... I don't know, I'm going to put it above Golds. Mostly because Nubas, now with the the Magatsu Reverse, it's actually very problematic because essentially you can negate 2 attacks, one from the protect and then another one from its skill. And so a lot of, you know, a lot of decks that get restanding or get multi-attacks, like, I think Nubatama could just sit there and go Unga Bunga after a certain point, and then they still have access to the Crow play. Don't quote me if I'm wrong. And then they also, if you still want to be that guy, you could still run Jamio as well. So, I don't know. I think Nubas are definitely better than some of the other decks, and I wouldn't be surprised if it starts popping up here and there. OTT, I'm going to say it's above Aqua Force, at the very least. Just one of these two. I think the Witch's build is quite interesting considering what we've seen so far. Whether or not it'll get to a point where it's actually going to be as consistent in a best of one with all the other blowout decks that are currently out there, that is remains to be seen. But I definitely expect it to be way more consistent than something like Aqua Force or Link Joker, simply due to, you know, considering how consistent its game plan is, for what I've heard. So definitely, Oracle Think Tank is definitely going to be doing something. I could also see Pale Moon doing extremely well as, you know, in that retrospect as well. But that's mostly due to the fact that Lugia Reverse has turned the Silverthorn deck into something very, very combo heavy. I mean, it's always been combo heavy. That's Pale Moon in general, but I think that Pale Moon, specifically for Silverthorn, definitely has a fair shot. If nothing else, due to the fact that you still have, what, like almost 3 years worth of support, or actually 2.5 years worth of support of Silverthorn, ever since Phantasmal Steve Restoration. So that was like September or October of 2019. You have an amazing card pool. You could either choose to just build up your hand with Dorian, or you can just go even hard on the turbo with the Excel 2s and just not care. It's honestly really solid. Although that being said, I don't see Harry making a splash and comeback anytime soon. And B, I think it's a little two-piece reliant. And then the bunny deck can be interesting, but I'm kind of not sure about that one. That one's, you know, we'll have to see. Royals, I expect to see it coming out. I definitely see Jewel Knights being as strong as people have been claiming it. I playtested it a lot over the last couple of weeks, and I definitely could say without a shadow of a doubt that you should expect to see Jewel Knights. I would also almost dare say that you can also see MLB and the Blaster Rush, but that's assuming that people actually try running that. But I expect Jewel Knights to start topping a lot, because Jewel Knights definitely is a deck to watch out for. Spike Brothers. I don't know much about Spikes. I'm going to be honest with you. Outside of what they do in Premium, with the Greedon stuff, your guess is as good as mine. I want to say that Dudley is an interesting combo. I want to say that it's good, but I haven't heard nearly as much about it in V as in terms of Premium. So, I'm going to put it here. I don't doubt that it's going to be strong, but I definitely think that there needs to be more results before I could sit there and finally judge on it. I'm going to save Shadows for last. So, Tachi's, I expect to kind of make a comeback. I would say even more so, I'm going to say like after Dimension Police. And the reason for this is simple. Tachi's has two consistent game plans. You either go the Anger Blader route with the Sweeper plays, or you go the Spider Driver route. And either way, it is Tachi's in general is such a niche clan to a point where they may be sporadic across, you know, the results. And I could definitely see it actually popping up here and there. I just don't know that many people who play Tachi's in general outside of one or two people, so we'll have to wait and see. And then Shadows. I'm going to say just slightly below Royals. And, you know, I'm probably going to readjust this after like a little bit of thinking, but like Shadow Paladin, even despite losing Luard as a viable deck, Revengers are absolutely absurd. Like, it's absolutely absurd. If the opponent is dumb enough to give you the 5 damage, you could possibly get at least 4 Vanguard attacks a turn. Think about that for 2 seconds. 4 Vanguard attacks. That's actually pretty fucking nutty when you consider it. Yeah, you're gonna have to counterblast 3 and ditch 3, but like, it's worth it if your opponent's at 5 and they have like 0 cards in hand after you've already gone hard as hell on them earlier. So like, Shadows is actually going to be a very strong threat going into this format. That's why I've said that like Kagero is actually a weaker version of Revengers at this point, because Revengers sits there and goes, "Hi, do you like playing the game? Yes? Well, too bad. I'm going to make you use everything in your hand to survive this turn 3 rush. And I feel bad for you if you don't have a heal guard, because if you don't, you're going to die." Outside of just that huge combo play on turn 3, you have a lot of really good support, and the deck really doesn't change much throughout most of the list as a result. You know, you have the Cloud Historic combo that gives you a 28, column that's actually pretty busted. You have the consistent searching off of the Tartu and Rinnel, as well as the other new grade 1 and 2 that just came out not that long ago. Like, you have so much searching, so much consistency that a lot of other decks wish that they had. So to a point where I think that, honestly, looking at it, like, both of these can be interchangeable. But I would say, it's really rough. I want to say that Shadows is better than Royals in this format, but a lot of people are going to bring it, and as a result, a lot of people are going to know how to play against it, so yeah. I'm going to readjust this list, and I'll get back to you in a moment. Alright, so I've readjusted this list a bit, so I'm going to start with the bottom a bit, because admittedly, a lot of these clans on the bottom I really don't have much experience with, personally, in V. But not enough, I don't have enough knowledge to accurately say that, hey, these clans are going to do somewhat well in tournament. Especially in a best of 1 setting. I decided to lump most of the red clans together, though, because honestly, these are so interchangeable at this point. Like, it really, because I'm aware like the Blazing Flare Dragon and the Dauntless Reverse thing is its own deck, and I realize that may pop up, but I don't see it popping up nearly as much as some of these other red clans. And as a result, I decided to put all of them and lump them all together in general, because honestly, these are interchangeable. Neonectar is definitely below the red clans, and, it definitely has a chance with Cecilia Reverse, but I think its main issue is consistency. Especially if it has to guard really large columns, it just sometimes just doesn't have the hand capable of being able to defend against a lot of that stuff. And then, as for the rest of the list, I think that DP is in a good spot. Golds and I'm gonna leave it like this, because Golds is a bit too high rolly for my liking. I'm gonna put LJ just slightly above it, but not as much as Witches, Oracle Think Tank, because I think that deck is actually very solid. I definitely expect these two to still remain the same for the most part. And then I decided to put Gears more toward the bottom of the top spot, simply due to the very nature is, when I look at all the other decks that I've put on top, Gears is an interesting deck because it's definitely, it's now a better Luard, but, it's Luard with Guard Restrict. I think that's the best way I could describe Gears currently, so we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But for the rest of these, the only thing I really changed also was the placement of Shadows versus Royals. Again, much like with the red clans, you could honestly you could either go either or with these two, but generally, they're not going to be as good as the top 3. And the simple fact is that mostly Genesis in general has way too much consistency with the Valkyrian deck. Granblue, I'm going to say that just because you have the Navigator plus Skull Dragon combo, it will always be consistent. And then Bermuda, even despite the hits, are still very strong regardless of how you go about building it for Prism, or the Highlander variant, because I think either or is pretty good for this event. I know I haven't said anything about it throughout this entire video, but honestly, Gurgit is a problem. Oh my god. I sat there and I'm just like, oh my lord, I'm mad that I sold Gurgit, because otherwise I probably would play it because it's so good. You have multi-attacks, you've got a left shield value. It's honestly disgusting. And then, honestly, like, again, you could very easily make the argument that Bermuda shouldn't be that high up, but just from my own personal experience, it's like, I don't think that was enough to hit Bermuda. What they hit for Bermuda, I don't think it was enough. If they hit Lisa a lot, then it would have been something, but yeah. That's pretty much it for this video. I just wanted to get my thoughts out on this because I know eventually WCC is going to do their own version of this, and it's probably going to look drastically different from mine because, you know, they at least somewhat have been playing V for a while, but this is just off my personal experience. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Until next time, this is Noah, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye!